This time we do a deep dive into the article by Martin Schlak on the science in China, and essentially this is a feature article about the efforts by China to become more prominent in the global science. And basically this is about a physical lab being constructed right now in the area of Guangzhou, and basically this is an account of how China makes effort to become a leading country in the world in terms of basic science. We know that China has been very successful in a lot of applied fields recently, especially given its ability to procure rare earths, and given that China has been one of the more rapidly developing nations in terms of economic, I shall put it, industrial economy, so that it has been throwing a lot of resources into becoming essentially the workshop of the world. And in recent years we see a consistent effort by China to become also a leader in science. And essentially the article mentions that in 2022 China has become the producer, essentially a leading nation by the number of articles in scholarly publications by its scientists, and in this China has eclipsed United States and Europe, and I would say Japan as those countries which were leading in scientific output up until then, and this fact demands attention to what the policy of China is in terms of science, and how that fits with the overall situation in which there is a regime in China which may not necessarily promote the principles of Western democracy. And then the question becomes how this sort of regime can be actually compatible with advances in science, given that for that a lot of creativity, a lot of open dialogue may be necessary. And I think this article sheds some light on that, especially given the importance of basic science for breakthroughs in many fields, and essentially we are talking about one of the underground labs for neutrino research, and this lab is one of the few other large-scale initiatives across China, such as for the capture of the cosmic rays or whatever, and for the production of very strong X-rays, and some similar other initiatives across China. And essentially this article highlights that there is a lot of investment in that. There is a program rolled out in China, and essentially China plans to be one of the leading nations in science globally, and this is within the next 10 years. So given that a lot of science is international, and in some of the projects, scientists from Europe and from Germany are involved, there is a lot of attention to that. And of course there are other initiatives on the table in the near future, such as for I believe particle collider lab of a very large scale, and there are right now efforts in CERN in Europe, in Geneva, to build something on that scale, even though its cost could be around 16 billion euros, and China promises to do that at a third of the price. And it seems that for China to become a leading nation in science, it will have to be more cooperative, especially with its European colleagues, and also China will have to, well, at least in my view, and also in view of the author of the article, to be a collaborative stakeholder in international science, and that one can assume that China will be adopting a lot of the guidelines for international scientific collaborations from similar initiatives in Europe and maybe even United States, even though we understand that United States right now is going through a period of more insular, isolationist policy making and policy in terms of how science is being funded and maybe also what science is being funded, and also in terms of whether scholars from China are going to be welcome in initiatives which are based in the United States. And I think that one can draw a conclusion from this article that essentially for China it may be necessary to become self-sufficient in scientific research as much as in other areas, given that European and American counterparts can become less welcoming to the initiatives which will be involving Chinese scholars and scientists. And basically, this is one of the more interesting articles from the latest edition of the Spiegel magazine, and this is one of those topics that will have a lot of impact on the development both of basic science in China and internationally, and in terms of the international competition for the leadership. And of course, for China, it is important to become a country with a larger number of scholars receiving international prizes, winning international scientific competitions, such as for the Nobel Prizes from Europe, and I think that this is part of the sense that China is no longer willing to only copy, not only in industry but also in science, but it also wishes to be a country which does a lot of scientific innovation, and for that it understands that it will have to be supporting a lot of basic research and applied research as well. And in this respect, the perspective of the German press, given that Spiegel is part of that landscape, this is one of the points of views that are very illuminating, given that also in Germany there was a very strong school of physics and science, and that a lot of scholars in physics who did win Nobel Prizes will historically have come from Germany as well, and I think that for China, one of the lessons from the European history and maybe even from the more recent events in the United States is that it is important to support international exchanges, and it is important to maybe take a pragmatic policy tack with respect to what scientific field, what local scientists can be allowed to do in independence from the political field from local politics. And this is also some of the topics that the article covers, since it speaks of the awareness among scholars in China that there has been a change in Chinese politics, and that scholars are usually loath to express any views that could be interpreted incorrectly, or let's say these scholars can feel that if they do express certain views, that can lead to certain drawbacks in terms of their career, in terms of their social standing, etc. So that in view of all that, one can still say that China is an emerging leader in global science, and that one needs to be paying attention to what is going on in China in the field of science.